Welcome to this SPEEDPAINT, an analysis of the Port Mafia leader, Mori Ougai, from the anime Bungō Stray Dogs. Before starting, I would like to clarify two things. Firstly, that I do this video in an objective way, in which I am not biased by my own personal opinions of whether I like him or not. Secondly, any hate comment will be deleted. Having said that, let's start. I'll skip the introduction, since you most likely already know this peculiar character. But long story short, Mori Ougai is a mafia boss that has a bad reputation amongst the Western fandom. Why is that? Well, people see him as a pedophile, someone that finds sexual attraction in little children. But is it true? Let's start from there. The real-life author pen name, Mori Ougai, was an asexual man. Of course, it was a different time period. But if we take a look at his masterpiece, Vita Sexualis, you'll see why lots of people label him as one.
You might think that this work piece I'm talking about is highly sexual, thanks to its name, from Latin, sex power, the power of sex in life, but it's not as it seems. Vita Sexualis was banned 3 weeks after being published for being too sexual and dangerous to public morals, which was clear proof of having not read the content that spoke about the protagonist of the novel, Shizuka Kenny, understood to be a semi-fictionalized autobiographical representation of the author and his reject of sex, hinting on asexuality. Of course, who knew of different sexualities during the 19th and 20th century? And how it would also imply on Mori, the character, being asexual.
Elise is based on the author Mori's work A Dancing Girl. Long story short, the novel explores teens of guilt. The main character, having to choose between his love for a woman named Elise and his work, chooses the latest over Elise, explaining it with logic.
Think that's reflected in the anime character, where Mori follows his brain instead of his heart. War Elise could have been like that at first because that's what he needed or wanted, some sort of minion. Then Mori changed Elise after Yusano, and again correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was stated that Mori did that exactly because he wanted to make Elise similar to Yusano. I see early Elise as empty, she acted very mechanically and didn't even seem human. I think it's not wrong to say that meeting Yusano, who always had a really strong personality, had an impact on Mori and changed his mind. He started liking the kind of personality more, thus it manifested in Elise. But as I was saying, because Mori is controlling, this is also a way for him to cope with the fact that he failed in controlling Yusano. Then he probably pampered Elise too much, that's why she's a spoiled brat now. Mori represents control. He sees everyone as a tool, including himself, to an extent. He doesn't view people as people, especially in the Port Mafia, where they are all his subordinates and must obey him if they wish to live. Instead, he views them as means to an end, to achieve a greater good. Let's get back to his ability, Elise. Mori controls every part of her appearance, as seen during the Great War and Beast, her speech, which also speaks for itself about the amount of self-hate Mori has to himself, but I'll elaborate later, and actions. Basically, everything about her is controlled by Mori. She is some sort of marionette for him to control. Especially during the Great War when she's in her combat mode. If you had a brand new weapon, you wouldn't mistreat it, because then it wouldn't work well. You would take good care of it and polish its edge to make sure it cuts down your opponent smoothly, right? That's exactly what Mori does. He is an expert manipulator, and can act charming. He makes you feel as if he cared about you, not saying he doesn't, but he wouldn't get attached or genuinely care for someone quickly, to make you feel motivated, seeking his approval and praise. If he treated his tools badly, they wouldn't do their work properly, and would be at risk of rebellion. Of course, he is the PM boss, no one would dare to go against him, but who knows, when you're talking about life amongst the shadows. A great example of his skills as a leader is during Dazai's PM times, when he met Odazuke. What Mori did, indirectly killing Oda, was highly beneficial for the organization, as he would eliminate a traitor, Bungō, defeat an enemy organization, which is also something he orchestrated, dispose of an anomaly between the mafia grunts, Oda, and obtain the skilled business permit, his main goal in this plan. He also drove Dazai out of the mafia, which could have various possible explanations. Number 1, because he was a threat, both to his position and his personal moral. He grew attached and actually cared about him, as seen in Beast, that is, the same Mori, so he decided to cut ties with him before being too genuine with his emotions. Also because he knew that Dazai would maybe seek vengeance for Oda's death and try to bring down the mafia. Number 2, because Dazai would try to suicide again. Mori knew Oda and Bungō were great friends, genuine ones. After killing him, he feared Dazai might do the same to himself, having no reason to live once again. With all the anguish and rage contained, Mori knows Dazai could pull it off without being stopped. Mori cares about him, which is why he had to let him go, to prevent the suicide under his wings, and because he knows that Dazai would most likely continue living for himself after leaving the PM, either for pure spite or because he has yet to find another purpose in life. As portrayed in Beast, we know that Mori isn't completely heartless, he simply puts on a mask that makes him devoid of any personal emotions, as if it would ruin all that he built within all those years of sweat and blood. His subordinates, especially Kiri and Miria, also recognize that fact, and they even chit-chat with him.
Kiri doesn't despise Mori, quite the opposite. Mori even offered her a chance to flee the mafia without any consequences, offer that she declined, stating that who she hated was the previous PM boss, not Mori.
It is also a subtle way of manipulation, making people think they have free will, but resulting in being a golden cage. But seeing Mori's expression, it might have been a genuine offer. Miria doesn't love Mori neither, as we've seen. He's deeply loyal to the man, even after witnessing how his longtime work partner quit and how many friends he lost. Some may argue that his loyalty lies in the organization itself, and not in Mori, as a leader, but this is something that can be proved wrong if we recall how Miria was recruited into the mafia. Yes, he was also manipulated, but this time it was more work of Dazai than Mori himself. Miria admires Mori as a leader, and knows what type of person he is. Miria is not stupid, but he looks up at Mori because he deems him as the ideal leader, thing that Miria thought he wasn't able to heal the sheep. Mori and Dazai have a complicated bond, but if I were to simplify it, I would call it a father-son bond. Not a healthy one, a toxic one. Mori cares for Dazai, as shown in Beast, and most likely hasn't abused him physically because he seems to disapprove of violence and teaching, and if you took a look at his words to Atsushi in both Beast and original universe, you could form a brief opinion of what his teaching methods are. He possibly manipulated and abused Dazai psychologically. Even if the kid is a genius, Mori has way more experience than him, and made him worse, with recruiting him into the mafia and killing someone in front of his very own eyes. Yes, Dazai was already messed up before meeting Mori, who saved him from a suicide attempt, but the environment Mori made him surround himself in was also a key factor of why he is how he is now. Mori also cultivated the smarts and tactics. If he didn't, Dazai wouldn't be such a grimace, even if he is gifted. Dazai dislikes, or even hates, Mori for what he did to Oda, but he understands why he did it. Dazai wouldn't assassinate Mori because he knows that Mori is needed to maintain the peace and balance of Yokohama, but has the power to do so. Mori cared for him, in his own, twisted way, and looked after him during years. It's difficult to say how their relationship is, because it's very complex, but it's a situation where none of them would kill the other out of hate. They understand why the other one does what he does, even if sometimes one might disapprove of the action.
When Desai says that he burned Mori's coat, we see Mori's almost sad expression in the manga, scene that the enemy skipped. Yosno was the first one of his trauma children, the one that suffered the most cruel treatment since they were a literal war.
Mori used her for the benefit of Japan, thinking of a way that could assure them a victory without sacrificing too much materials, the soldiers. Mori also did things for Yasano's own good, such as isolating her from the other soldiers to not get her attached to them, men that were destined to die anyway. He also thought that he owed her, because he was the one that thought of involving her in the Great War to create the Immortal Army, even if the plan failed badly, with Yasano going mad, and the soldiers too. He felt somewhat guilty for leading her into that state, so he tried to cope with that fact with making Elise's personality similar to hers. Also because he could have liked her stubborn and determined attitude with him. He called Elise's wife in the English translation, but in Japanese, he used a peculiar term, suma, which means long life partner or side dish, less commonly used to refer to wife. Which is why when Futsuawa said he was calling the police, that Mori whined, but that's the type of response that hurts me the most, because out of all possible meanings the word had, Fukuzawa chose to take it as the worst one. Also, do you seriously think that someone like Fukuzawa would let Mori go, if he were truly serious? I don't think so. Nor not more than trust him with the task of protecting Yokohama. The term lelican refers to people that like cute little girls, like children, in a platonic way, just as how some people love babies or puppies because of their cuteness. This term is surprisingly scandalous in Western culture, as I've realized, since I never thought of it in a pedophilic way, which is one of the reasons why Mori gets misunderstood as a pedophile. And remember that Elise's words are most likely all controlled by Mori, too. Which also means that all the insults thrown at Mori are work of his own, which indicates an incredible level of self-loathing.
Even Dazai himself knows that Mori isn't a pedophile, otherwise why would Beast Dazai entrust him with an orphanage to look after? Remember that characters in Beast are the same ones, with the same soul, just under different circumstances. Mori was still the PM boss for a while in Beast.
I would go even deeper into his character, but obviously time doesn't add up. So I might do another analysis on him at least next time.